If someone is murdered, the very first person that is interviewed in the case is the spouse. This should tell you everything about marriage. Okay? Matter of fact, we have a slide that will help you this. There really is only 2 sets of letters that can go in there. 2 L's or 2 S's. So I can sum up this whole marriage series very quickly, and we can actually dismiss after the end of this by saying this. This is really the truth about marriage, period. You have a choice to make this morning. The choice is to love them more than you are annoyed by them. In Jesus' name, we thank you for today. Amen. Everyone go home. That's it. Truthfully, that's just truth be told, you've got to love your spouse more than you are annoyed by them. And this takes work. It does. We can't act as if it just falls onto our lap. Because that's what this world has painted us, that if your marriage has made it, then it was meant to be. We see it on the Today Show, Good Morning America, whatever your preference is on the morning show with your coffee. And all of a sudden, someone comes up, I don't know if it's Willard Scott or whoever comes up and says, we're going to celebrate Bob and Susan this morning. They're celebrating their 75th anniversary, and all of us on the other end of the tube are going, what? Like, how did they do this? Like, this is the impossible. They did it. They were meant to be. So let me explain something to you. If that's how we work, that the marriages that make it were meant to be, then if the marriages that are not meant to be, then your chances of getting sick are 35% greater than those of couples who are happily married. You get this? That's dumb. That's not truth. But if we want to keep going down this path, that if your marriage works and it lasts forever, then you were meant to be, then your life expectancy on average 4 years less than that of people who are happily married. So if your marriage is on the rocks, you are going to die 4 years sooner than the people who are having perfect marriages. Obviously, that's not true. Every one of us in this room are poor students of probability. Every one of us in this room. Every one of us. That's why I was on an airplane one time. And all of a sudden, there was a bump. The woman beside me attacked me, and it was not my wife. She jumped, she grabbed my leg, and she just held on, and I was like, what's wrong with you? Like, what is wrong? We're gonna die! And I'm like, no, we're not. But every one of us are poor students of probability. Every one of us. So that's the same concept that when the world puts on us that if your marriage makes it, then you were meant to be. Then the rest of us, if there's someone in this room that has went through divorce, then you were not meant to be. Hogwash. That's hogwash. That's shenanigans. Malarkey. Guys, marriage takes work. The famous saying is, you don't fall into love, you fall into ditches, right? And that's what you don't fall into love. There's all types of love that, sure, when my wife walked through the door for the very first time and I saw her, I was like, right? Right? I was like, yeah. And then I went home and I painted this beautiful picture about how awesome she was, right? And then we got to know her. And then she got to know me. She went home too and painted this big picture of me of how awesome and studly I was. And then reality sunk in. And I was like, ugh. But that's the problem. We live in a culture that parades this marriage of perfection. And if it's not perfect, then it's going to fall and we're going to suffer and it's going to be horrendous. Now, before I really get down and dirty into the marriage side, I want to address something. I didn't do it soon enough in the previous service, so I'm going to do it now. If you're single this morning and you've gone through a divorce, you are not divorced. Some of you are like, listen, If you've gone, there's a key word, gone through divorce, then you're not divorced. Divorce doesn't identify who you are, okay? That doesn't, it's not like you're a scarlet letter big D, unless you're a Duke fan. We'll give you that one. But you can't just walk around with a big D on your chest and be like divorced, all right? You got to go past it. You've got to move on, okay? So you've got to overcome those issues and let it go, all right? Because now you're single. And now you have the opportunity to what? Start fresh. Start new. But in starting new, you've got to let go of the D word. Because if you don't, you'll bring that into your new marriage and you'll start working that into the foundation as you're building it. Those trust factors. You'll be like, my ex-husband did that too. My ex-wife used to say those things to me too. Hey guys, guess what? Surprisingly enough, all of us, the first year of marriage, I really did think I was alone, and my wife felt the same way. Of like, we're alone in this. Only he is like this. Only she is like this. But come to find out, all of you are like this. Every one of us in this room, we all have problems. We all do. We all have little things and quirks and weirdness things that just, oh my gosh, they compound and compound. So if I was to sit here and say to you guys that me and Anna are perfect, and you guys should look at us as an example, I should be struck dead, okay, by God for sure. Because there's a lot of hiccups in our life, and trust me, I will talk about those in a second. My wife is in for a good message this morning. Some of you are going to go, I was in the first message. You left that out in the second message. Maybe I did. I love you, baby. I am not going to get to make out with her tonight at all. But guys, listen, in our expectations, it's sad. In our expectations, we've put up some crazy ideology that creeps in, and it hurts us, actually. And it's beyond amazing. Guys, if we start comparing ourselves to other people, if we start looking at other marriages and looking at how they do things, then it actually hurts us. I'm going to say right now, this message title is appropriate, Fixing Us. Fixing Us. Now, we put a little tagline out there, and if you received the mailer or you've seen the billboards around town or whatever, it says, going to church is easier than going to a counselor. We are pro-counselors here at this church. We know that's a necessity, and we love counselors. But I will acknowledge it is a little easier to come to church here, right? No one's going to make you hug it out right now with your spouse. No one's going to make you air out your dirty laundry. Everyone can just sit here and be real quiet. The only thing you have to do this morning is listen. That's it. So coming to church is easier. And the odd thing about it is that what makes church even more easy is that this book, which is relevant for today, this book is actually a great journal piece, instruction manual for your marriage. Most and all counselors, unless they're just out in left field and they believe in Scientology, everyone uses this stuff. Even in stories of past, Shakespeare was known to use stories from the Bible to create his own stories. Movies today are actually mimicked after most Bible stories. There's a root to where all of this begins, and it's right here. So for us, if you want a healthy marriage, if you want a healthy future spouse, then this is where you go first. So this is kind of easy. You can go steal one of these right now out of a hotel, and it's okay. Like, that's the only thing you're allowed to take from a hotel. You guys realize that? Some of you are like, no, you can take the towels. No, you can't. No one. You are a thief. All right? Revelation 21:8. All right? Read it. Okay? But guys, here we have the Bible, and it's real, and it's awesome, and it's so easy. So, we got to stop putting these expectations that we've and they're crazy. Some of these expectations are ridiculous. We've actually said, and it's funny, it's like we look at other spouses and we'll go, I love this one. I don't think that happily married couples fight like we do. Ouch. If my wife ever said that to me, I would probably cry. It's like, that just immediately puts us in a spot where we're not happy. And it's like, you're calling us broken, basically. You're calling us broken. And yeah, maybe we are. And maybe it does need to be acknowledged. But don't put it out there of like this other marriage is happily married. These expectations can be really scary. And there's this great story in 2 Kings chapter 5 about a commander of the army of Syria, and his name is Naaman. And what happens is, and I'll paraphrase this, and I encourage you to journal and write it down and go back this week, but in 2 Kings chapter 5, we see that there's this commander, and he was a leper. There was a woman this little girl of sorts in the fort, whatever, castle, I don't know what it was, kingdom, and basically heard about this and was like, hey, there's this guy named Elisha, and he's a prophet from God, and he will know what to do. So Naaman, being desperate, who wouldn't? Your skin's falling off, right? Pretty gross. And so here, this guy is desperate. He's excited, and it's like, I'm going to go get an answer. I'm going to go do this. Do you remember your wedding day, how awesome it was? Do you remember that moment? I remember sitting in the back. I actually have it on videotape, and I was mic'd in, and this was in the back, and it's on the videotape. My brother-in-law was actually marrying us, okay, because her father was giving her away. And so all my friends were all lined up in the back, and we're just hanging out. You know, we're doing one of these things like punch dancing because we're so excited, you know. And so some of you are like, what? I don't know how to dance. All I know how to do is punch dance, and it's a lot of fun, okay? So I'm in the back, and someone goes, what if she doesn't show up? I looked at my friend who's in the party, you know, and I'm like, dude, take off your tux. Like, get out. So then I looked at my brother-in-law, and I go, she's going to come out, right? Like, there was an active moment of serious, like, expectation, she's coming out. And the expectation also of that day was it's awesome. I mean, on your wedding day, you don't think about Jack. Like you do, but you don't. Like you shouldn't. So it's like you walk out there and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. And nothing in the world can like bother you. And there's food everywhere. And there's people. And we had like this money carriage, like canary type of thing. And people are throwing money in there. We're like walking out of like carrying money around. We're like counting it on the airplane. Like it was an awesome day. Awesome. I mean, it was great. And then we woke up. And it was like, honeymoon is over. We're back into the real world. Our expectations are changing now. All that hype up to the wedding day, all the preparation, preparing for this wonderful day, but not preparing for anything else. Like, as sad as that is. So Naaman here, he goes to Elijah and says, all right, what do I need to do? So Elijah tells him. And then he gets offended by it. And then he tells him what he has to go, like on top of that, you got to go dip like yourself in this muddy river like 7 times. And he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to do that. He was so mad he was not going to do it. But this was the instruction spoken by God. Because there's some things in this Bible that you got to do. And you're going to look at it and be like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it because it means I got to swallow my pride sometimes. I got to stop. I got to rethink. And then it's like, I can do it. And if I do it, it'll be healthy. It will fix it. You have a choice. Naaman had a choice. When he got down to that water source, he looked at it and goes like, it's too dirty, I'm not doing it. Luckily, there was a servant there of his. And the servant kept persuading him, man, you got to dip. You got to dip in this Jordan. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. Finally, Naaman was like, all right, I'll do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to like when I'm doing it, but I'm going to do it. And sure enough, he goes and he dips himself. And that last time he pops out, and what happens? He's clean. That disease that was incurable was taken off of him. His expectations wasn't what he thought. It's just like us. Like we gained some weight, right? And it's like someone says, hey, you need to lose some weight. And you don't want them to tell you how to lose the weight. Like no one wants to be like, you need to go to the gym. And you're going to be like, oh, I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. No one does that. You're a lunatic unless you're Zach. Zach's the only one in this room right now that's allowed to say that. But otherwise, you're standing out there with your gut and you're going, just tell me I need a dozen donuts. Just tell me. If I eat a dozen donuts, this goes off, right? Like, that's what we want. Every one of us. Those are our expectations. We set them up high. Truth be told, it's not going to be exactly what we thought. Right before I married my wife, I'm going to tell on us a lot, so I apologize. Well, right before we got married, I had gone up to her bedroom at her parents' house, and I saw how dirty it was. And I was like, it's a dirty bedroom. There's clothes like everywhere. Like it was nuts. And I went and told my friend, like I was like, man, her bedroom was dirty. And so my friend was like, oh, it's going to get worse when you get married. And I'm like, no, it won't. Expectations high. She even acknowledged it too. She's like, I know my bedroom's dirty, but I promise, when I get married, it will be so much better. 11 years later. Hasn't changed. But I can hold a grudge. I can sit here and keep telling her, bedroom needs to be clean, bedroom needs to be clean, bedroom needs to be clean. Won't you fix it? Won't you clean it? Why don't I do it? She does so much other things that are great and amazing. So big deal. She has one flaw. She cannot keep our bedroom clean. All right? I mean, seriously. She's actually pretty bad at it. But is that really worth it? Like, is that really worth an argument to let that build upon, to let that just stoke inside of me this fire of frustration? Or do I just get off my lazy bum and I clean the bedroom because obviously I have the desire in my heart to want it to happen? So why don't I make it happen, right? So there's like a double-edged sword to this. I can sit here and try to cut her, or I need to cut myself. I need to bring the attention back to me and say, you know what, I could do it. While she's trying to do everything else, my wife, we're lucky that my wife actually is a stay-at-home mother, and you guys know the stress of that is crazy with 4 kids. She calls me 15 times in a day and goes, you got to get me out of this house. Maybe you're stuck. I don't know what to do. You're stuck. I'll come home and she's, I'm out. I'm like, where are you going? I'm not here. I'm out. I'm like, no. She's already made dinner. She's done all this stuff. I could easily go upstairs and clean the bedroom. Easily. Guys, you can't be putting these expectations where you think, I bet Pastor Josh has never argued with Anna like that. I bet Anna's never said anything mean like that to Pastor Josh. Let me tell you right now, it has happened. 2 nights ago. Hold on. 2 nights ago, kids are nuts, right? Kids are nuts. And I'm going into this with, like, as best as a peacemaker as I possibly could. The Bible instructs us to be peacemakers. So I'm going into this peacemaking, but then it just gets over the top where all my kids just want to fight, and all my son wants is a donut for dinner. And that doesn't work well with me because I do realize that there's either donut or spanking spoon. That's the alternatives. And if I give him a donut, what happens is I just made him into basically a juvenile delinquent for his high school teachers. You know, it's like I've turned him into a monster by giving him this donut at the age of 4. So it's like, dude, you're going to eat that food. And it's good food. And it's like, eat that food. And I'm like doing this with the spanking spoon, like, come on, man. Like, it's going to happen. And you're like, oh, I want a donut. And everyone's just screaming for, you know what, Cohen gets punched somehow. Carly already that day, oh my God, why did this happen? Why? I'm still kind of furious about it. For some reason, at Christmas time, somebody gave my child a Crayola marker making kit. Who gives any child a Crayola marker maker kit? No, a lunatic does that. Named D-E-B-B-Y. My M-O-M. My mom. In the middle of my living room floor, my daughter just... We have to get new carpet because of it. Like, I'm not kidding, because it's embarrassing when you come over, unless you just are like, okay with the blue spot. But I'm not, because I'm a little OCD about things, all right? So I'm arguing, I'm fighting, I'm yelling, I'm sending the kids to bed, and my wife looks at me and goes, Josh, we need to read more scriptures with our kids. We needed to set them down, and we needed to talk to them. We needed to pray with them. And at that moment, I'm just like, you know, you need to just... So she knew not to push me anymore because she knows me, 11 years, right? So she knows not to push me anymore because then it's just kind of like, I ain't going to do it because I'm a man. I'm not going to do it. So last night, kids, go upstairs and brush your teeth. You come back downstairs on the couch. And she goes, why are they coming back down on the couch? You think I was going to tell her that it was her idea? No way. No way. Not going to happen. She gets no credit for this until maybe right now. I knew what was right. The night before, I didn't want to hear it, but last night, I knew that it needed to happen. So I needed to swallow my pride. And I needed to look at my wife and say, we're going to bring these kids down and we're going to talk to them. So what did? We set them down. We said, all right, guys, what are you thankful for? My first kid, Cohen, goes, Xbox. And I'm like, no. But isn't that great, though? Like, my kid's walking around in life thinking that he's thankful for an Xbox at the age of 6. Thank God that I was able to correct this. How long would he have been walking around thinking, Xbox, I'm thankful for that? That's a bad parenting move. That my child thinks you should be thankful for that. So I got to help him, instruct him, and mold him to what is perfect and good, what is pleasing, what God-centered thankfulness is really about. So we got to correct that, and it was great. We talked about certain things, and we went through the room, and everyone said they're thankful for each other and for this and for that, and it was great. Then we opened up the scriptures, we read some scriptures, and then we prayed, and then we sang a worship song. And then in the middle of the worship song, my youngest son, Colton, jumps up and starts doing a booty dance. Nobody booty dances to, we don't booty dance anyway, so I'm not even quite sure where he's learning this from. Because you obviously know the only dance moves I know is punch dancing. So in the middle of worship, here's my son, but what did we have to do? We got to talk to him about it. Hey, this is not good. You don't booty dance during, I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice. Doesn't happen. It's like, doesn't happen. But it was great. And they went to bed peacefully, and it was a great night. It was something else, but it was a great night. Guys, we have choices to be made, and we've got to learn that God's expectations could be different and are different. We don't know his ways. Who are we to try to figure out God, right? To try to figure out. But if we listen, God will show us. This is not a puzzle piece. He tells us that the ones who seek after him are wise. The ones that know and see his face know his will. Like, that's the key ingredient for us. Here at this church, we have this little graph that we use. Here's the husband, here's the wife, and here's God. as you two get closer with God, you two get closer. It's important that the only expectations you put on one another is your relationship with him. That's key. As you build each other up, as you guys start seeking one another's face for him, it's awesome. Listen, my wife and I, we're in charge of one another. I'm in charge of her and she's in charge of me. When we did our vows that day, we made a covenant with one another. And in that covenant, we said to each other that there's no longer two but one. We are united together. Her actions are my actions. My actions are her actions. So we are in charge of one another. We're taking care of one another. That's the most important thing that you guys can grab out of today's message, is that you've got each other's back. You're learning each other. I am her biggest fan. She's my biggest fan. Stop looking at other marriages. Stop today. Stop looking at it. Do not use, even though I'm giving you good examples of my wife and I, but don't use us. It's you. It's you two. That's it. And your relationship with him. Because it's different. It's different. There's different little things that happen. The same type of arguments, the same type of structure, but God. Listen, this past summer, I'm going to tell on us. This past summer, we celebrated our 10th year anniversary. Do you know that the day that we got married, surprisingly, I know, it's just out of the blue, that the day we got married, do you know that I knew that someday we were going to celebrate 10 years? It's crazy. I know. Insane. You know what would have been awesome? From day one, I would have been putting away money, $10, $15, to save up for a cool romantic getaway, right? We had some friends that on their 10th year anniversary, we went to like Hawaii, went on a cruise, and I'm sitting there going, I'm such a loser husband. Such a loser husband. You know where we spent our 10th year anniversary? At summer youth camp with our kids. That's fun. Nothing happened that night. I know that's TMI, but let me just tell you, we're in a dorm room with kids all around us, right? Not cool. And we're on single beds like I Love Lucy. Like, that's our 10-year anniversary. But if you're my Facebook friend, you saw something else. Because Facebook likes to, elevate and glorify things a whole lot better than what they really were. So at the very last minute, Tom was here one day, and I said, Tom, you have a friend who owns a house in Topsail Island. He's like, yeah. And I was like, hey, can we rent that home? Like, how much should it cost? Can you get us a deal? And he's like, yeah, let me look into it. So we got it for like $100 a night or something. And I was like, a sweet big home and $100 some a night. And I was like, this is awesome. It's like just the spare of the moment. So then I called up my parents, and they're like, hey, we'll come down, we'll watch the kids too, and we'll help you guys at the beach. And I'm like, score. This is awesome, because then my dad will also pay for dinner sometimes. Awesome. I'm like, yes, this is going to be a great trip. The day before we left for the beach, it hit me. I can get Jeremy McKnight, our old creative pastor. He moved to D.C., but he has all these cameras. He has like this $18,000 lens and all these big bodies and stuff, and he lets me shoot with it sometimes, so he trusts me. So I was like, hey, Jeremy, can I borrow this camera? He's like, yeah, man, yeah, definitely. So the day before we leave, this hits. Get his camera. I'll go and I'll get her wedding dress, and I'll put her in the wedding dress, and then I'll take photos of her trashing her dress on the beach, like getting in the ocean and all this stuff. Is going to be awesome. It's going to be the coolest thing ever. All for the day before we left for the beach. And I'm getting all this ready. I hid the dress and all the luggage stuff and got it all out and surprised her. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, right? It was so cool. And then we took all these photos. It was funny. I went to like Pinterest to get some cool like trash to dress kind of looking photos, If you're like, I don't know what trash to dress is, you go to a session with your dress and you lay in the sand, you get in the ocean with your dress, you do all that kind of stuff. So I saw some photos, and so I went to my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I can't take all these photos. And there's this really good photo, one that no one's ever seen. And I go, hey, Dad, I need you to take this photo. And I showed him. He goes, God, no, son, I ain't taking that photo. I go, it's got to happen. He's like, I'm not doing it. I'm like, no, you're doing it. So sure enough, as awkward as it was, here's my wife and I making out on the beach and my dad leaning down taking photos of us. Talk about romantic. Right? So romantic. We're taking these photos and people are walking by going, congratulations! And my wife and I are like, been married for 10 years. And everyone's like, wow, you look good, girl. And like all this stuff, right? And then we post it on Facebook and everyone's got like 1 billion likes and like, oh my gosh, I hate Josh. He's so much better than my husband. I'm going home and I'm getting text messages constantly from all my friends and they're like, I hate you. Way to set the bar. My favorite one I got from my friend, the only text message that came through was stop it. My favorite one, stop it. I'm like, what'd I do, man? I'm steadily. Thought about this all the day before we left. So I got a photo, so here it is. That's some pretty tough stuff right there. Try to match that, boys. Try to match that. Not gonna happen. Guys, truth be told, come on. The day before I thought about it, I could have easily been a very good steward of our money and saved and actually went on a real trip without kids, without my dad taking a photo of it. I could have hired a real professional photographer and had him do it. I mean, that's all it was. Are we thankful for it? Absolutely. We're so thankful for those photos. And we laugh and we think they're great and they're great memories, keepsakes for sure. But if we keep looking at other marriages and all the people around us, then you're going to be up for a lot of pain. It's up for you to work on your marriage. Stop trying to work on other people's marriages. Jesus gives us something that's really great, and it's a commandment. And he says it here in John chapter 13, verse 34. It says, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And I wish there wasn't a period there. I know you can't really change the Bible, but I wish there was a comma and it say, but is it really worth doing the alternative? I mean, can you really sit here and say, if I don't love, then all I want to do is show anger and cause someone pain? That's better. You know, do you really want to cause someone pain? Do you really want to provoke someone? Is that really worth it? One thing you got to learn in marriage is that you got to know when to not argue, when to pick your battles. It's not worth me arguing with my wife over something petty. It's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. Just to win the argument. Same goes for her. It's pointless. Now, it doesn't matter if you just bow down and just be like, you're right, honey. You're right. It's not like that. But if you start building a foundation of love and trust, and all it's based upon is who's right and who's wrong, that's not fun. Guys, you've got to learn each other. You've got to be with one another. This love factor is something that Jesus introduces, and we call it agape love. This was something unknown. And we don't see it until the crucifixion, when Jesus was hanging on the cross, when he shouts out, hey, forgive them, they know not what they do. This is agape. The people who were crucifying him, the people who was conflicting pain upon his life, he forgives them. He looks at them and says, it's not your fault. Because as we read, we know in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, it says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. I'm not arguing against my wife. I'm arguing against a spirit. I'm arguing against another, it's a spiritual warfare, this other realm of living. And the beautiful part about it is this: Jesus actually gives us instruction to not even waste your time, because he'll do it for you. He'll fight your battles on your behalf. So when those moments arise and you start getting in that heated debate, and it starts getting hard, and you just the yelling and the voices and everything, step back. Step back and and do a refresh. Step back and say, whoa, this is not us. There's been multiple times my wife starts yelling at me, and she hates it because all I want to do is laugh because I know it's not my Anna. Now, I'm not saying she becomes possessed, all right? But all of a sudden, she starts doing something, and she goes, that's what she does. She always clips her fist. She goes, I just hit you right now. And I just start laughing. She goes, now you just makes me want to hit you more. But I know that's not her. 5-10 minutes later, she comes back and says, I'm sorry. I shouldn't act like that. And I do the same thing to her as well. I get hot, I get heated, and I come back and I go, baby, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Because these are steps to move forward if acknowledging. If you want your marriage to work, you've got to acknowledge that. You've got to acknowledge that it's not you two. It's the spiritual warfare around you. I'm going to have to say it. As much as it hurts me to want to say it. I don't want to say it. I really don't. But I have to say it because I think I need to acknowledge it so that you guys can see some revelation here. Not all marriages that need to be fixed are going to work out. Especially if only one of you wants it to be fixed. I hate it when I get a phone call. And don't let this deter you from calling me and talking to me. But I hate it when I get a phone call from one of the spouses. And they say, hey, Pastor Josh, I really want to meet with you. And I go, oh, great, let's talk. It's going to be a good day. You and I are going to talk. And I go, is your significant other going to come with you? And they go, no, they don't want to. It changes everything. I say, do they want to talk to my wife? And they, no, they don't want to talk to anyone. I'm like, it's tough. But I do know that marriages that are willing to change and rethink the attitude that is separating them, if they're willing to rethink that attitude, then they can be fixed. If they can go back to the root of it and they want to work this out, they want to let go of bygones and they realize what agape is all about, that it's unconditional and that it's love and it's sacrificial. Listen, my wife is fearful that someday I'm going to hike Mount Everest. And she's fearful that as I hike it, that I'm going to come back off that mountain with no nose because it froze off. Now, my wife's not vain. She's just real. Who really wants to make out with a noseless person, right? Even though she says my nose gets in the way all the time because it's really big. But it's still unconditional. I know if I hiked Mount Everest and I got off the top of that mountain with no nose, I'm going to go home to a woman who still loves me. Because there's agape love inside of her. Unconditional. Sacrificial. Now, will she be mad at me? Sure. She's still going to love me. No matter what. We have to work on our agape love. Now, there's one last thing I want to bring out. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, it says, your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Do you know that my wife, when we got married, when we became no longer two but one, we became accountable for one another. It's inevitable that someday my wife will stand in the presence of God without me. Without me. I won't be there. I won't be there to hold her hand. She won't be there to hold my hand. We will be in the presence of God. She will by herself. Do you know that because of me here on this earth, I'm helping her dictate her passion and love for God? I'm either building her up towards that or I'm tearing her away from it. You know, I'm in charge of that. I'm in charge. She's in charge of that with me. Our spiritual well-being is in place of both of our hands together. That's what drives me to make this marriage work. Because when she gets into the presence of God, I want to see her in eternity. In Matthew chapter 22, there was these Sanhedrin people kind of guys. They're weird people. And they came up to Jesus trying to trip him up. And they said, hey, so there's this woman. She's got all these husbands and they've died. And so when she dies, who will she be married to? And Jesus says, neither of them. When you get to heaven, it's kind of like you're just up there hanging out with the angels, praising God. And all these guys are like, really? That's what it is? Now, some of you may get really sad because you go, I want to be with my spouse in heaven. You will be with your spouse in heaven, okay? The difference is that there's no sickness and disease and there's no pain, right? So clearly, you'll actually love your spouse more when you get to heaven. You're going to love them more than you actually love them right now. But what's great about this is that here on earth, I'm accountable for my wife. And it's my purpose and my duty to sharpen her and bring her closer to God at all times. To never tear her down, but to build her up and to show her the right person she needs to be for God. That is on me. And that should drive you to do the same. Rather than I hope she has a good relationship with God. Do you talk to your spouse about God? Just like when we asked my son, hey, what are you thankful for? Minecraft. Great. That's a sure son. We've missed it. I need to know where her priorities lie. God. So we talk about God often. We talk about scriptures. We pray for one another. We build each other up. We don't tear each other down. Because guys, there's something really important here in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. For some reason, we overlook it. But here at this church, what do? We dissect these words. There's a reason why Peter wrote it the way he did. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. He uses descriptive words, a roaring lion. That's what the devil does. He yells, "Wah!" right? He gets your attention. Now, if you're in the jungle and you heard a roaring lion, are you going to keep listening to it and trying to figure out where it's at and move closer? Or the minute you hear it, you jump in your safari jeep and you take off? Or do you grab your muzzle loader and try to kill it? I don't know what option there is. Depends upon if you're Chuck Norris or not. But the bottom line is, you don't go towards it, right? So here in these scriptures, your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. It's important that we pay attention to the roaring lion. What are those roars that are taking place around us? Because if we start giving it attention and we start moving towards those sound effects, the flash bang type of analogy here, but if you start moving towards those sounds, you're going to get devoured. That's why there's no room for flirting outside of your spouse. There's no room for this, oh, it's just my secretary. We can just go out to eat and hang out. No, you can't. You can't. Some of you are like, I did that yesterday. Stop. There's no room for flirting. There's no room for anything that will take you away from your spouse. So guys, pay attention to the roaring. Call it for what it is and put attention on your marriage. Put attention on your relationship with God so that as you get closer to Him, you two will get closer as well.